Well, the majority of the training leading up to Guantanamo Bay was like it's like you said, it's like conveyor belt training.
Yeah.
It's just let's get them the very basics, get them through there. And this is before they started like pulling people from those that's been serving in that area for a while and saying, "Hey, tell them what it's like. Been there for the last two, year and a half or whatever." But anyways, so we were getting the very basics of not only what was 95 Echo, 31 Echo, which is still military police, but it's the cage kickers, as we call them, the guys that work in prison. So we were kind of learning that aspect. And it was literally like, make sure you count all the spoons when you get them back and stuff like that. For the psychological stuff, it really, it was just, they were trying to train us how to not get mad when somebody throws, face or
Yeah.
cum in your face or whatever, and I mean, I got hit by multiple things like that throughout that
Jeez.
experience in Guantanamo. But
That's yeah, yeah.
they basically were training us like, so someone throws a cup of shit in your face, right? You can't get mad. You have to just look at them. You have to walk off the block. You have to go take your uniform off, because we always brought an extra uniform on the block with us.
Just in case you got shit or
Right.
come on you. That's
Exactly.
awesome.
So we throw the new uniform on, and of course we have mouthwash. We'd rinse our hair. We'd scrub up this little water hose and wash off real quick, and then we'd have to go right back down the block, look at the person that did it, and says, "How can I help you? What's wrong? Why are you upset?" You know. So
Is that right? I know what I'm gonna ask Ian this. Do you think that's right? I mean, I want your opinion. I think that's a bunch of horse shit, dude. But why, Ian, do you think that as a
I
civilian,
feel like I
do
don't
you think
know enough
that's
because is it meant to kind of I don't know psychological thing because I was thinking about what's his name, General Mattis, where General Mattis was always very against waterboarding. And the reason he said he was against it is he said, I can get a lot more accomplished with a pack of cigarettes and just like give a
sure?
guy a cigarette and we could communicate. And he's probably going to give up a little bit more information with me, like getting down to his level. So I don't know if that's the thinking. I don't know because I am a civilian and I haven't experienced it where like the anger, I would assume like getting in the guy's face, it might not lead to getting any information that you're trying to interrogate these guys for.
well, I'll tell you this much, that when that happened, that was during Abu Ghraib is when I was down there.
Which,
So
yeah,
when that started coming out and everything. So there was also in Guantanamo, everybody kept talking about you're waterboarding, you're torturing them, and
Yeah,
there was
we'd hear
nothing
that
like
all. I
that
mean, you
going.
hear that all the
Yeah,
time, and it was bullshit.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
none of that was going on. We were watching the news and hearing people tell us what we were doing, and we're like, y'all don't understand. If we forget to give them the right servings, we get in trouble for, if we don't give them enough serving on their food and everything. When they're in Guantanamo, that's where what you were talking about, Ian, where they're trying to sit them down in a room and have that pack of cigarettes with them and eat that meal with them. And, there are some things they did to soften them up before that, but it was never waterboarding or anything. It was just other psychological things. And
well, you know,
going
it's
to your,
funny when we had Ed Dope on the podcast the first
Yeah, I was
time,
gonna say
it's well
same.
known
Yeah.
because it came out, they blasted certain music, including Dope. And that's why I
Mhm.
asked Ed Dope about it. And he was like, yeah, I love the fact that we were playing
I,
at Gitmo.
That's a
Like,
great song too. I have it in my workout
yeah.
list. I just listened to
I
it at the
can't,
gym.
I cannot listen to Delta Dawn without getting the
Yeah.
heebie-jeebies. I'm telling you, because they would play Delta Dawn, Metallica, and it just whatever song they had with
I think the
Metallica
whole
going.
list you could find online, the whole like
Yeah.
Gitmo playlist.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it was all three at the same time and everything. But this was for people who don't understand what was happening and everything. And I didn't understand at the time. Now I do. After several years of training and stuff like that. But at the time, I didn't know. But what they were doing, soften them up, was they had to keep them awake. So
Yeah.
if you bring them into a room to
Sleep
prepare them for
deprivation.
questioning, and a civilian, here in the United States, and civilian side, you put somebody in a room, leave them in there for an hour because you want them to be stuck in their own thoughts. And if they fall asleep, that tells you something. So that's a whole different thing.
What does
But
that
in
tell
Guant,
you? Tell me what that. No, come on, tell me. What
well,
does that
so
mean if they
like
fall?
if you put somebody in a room and they start getting really comfortable and going to sleep and everything, most people are like, oh, it's because he realizes he's, not guilty. He's like, no, he realizes he's guilty. He's got caught. He's just relaxing because he knows he's about to be in a jail cell and he's going to be
Right.
in there for hours with people screaming and yelling, not going to get much sleep and everything. So that's what that means. You put somebody that you suspect of a crime or something like that in a room for a couple hours and you kind of watch their body language, everything. If they start relaxing, getting some sleep, putting their head down and everything, you can be like, yeah, that's pretty much telling me I'm on the
Huh.
right track. I got the right person, you know?
Well, isn't it like also just the psychological, torture, for lack of a better word, of putting them through that? Because, like, for example, I read the book, A Place Called Waco by David Thibodeau, and for those who don't know, David was one of the members of the Waco group.
Koresh, the
Right.
Koresh,
Yeah,
David Koresh
yeah,
guy.
he
Yeah.
was he was
Yeah.
actually, it's weird, he was the drummer for Koresh's band because
Oh, I saw a
Koresh originally had a
documentary.
band.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when the ATF was trying to get them to evacuate the home, they were just blasting music all
Yeah.
throughout the night, hoping, all right, we're gonna really get these people annoyed to the point where they're gonna say, I need to leave here. This is too much.
Yeah. And it all depends on your definition of torture. But yes, it's all
Sure, exactly.
psychological uh games basically. But
Does it work? Does music? I've never seen that we're blasting music. Actually, I think it has, like you were saying, you were getting tired of it. It has a detrimental effect on the actual guards. It affects them just as much as it
yeah,
affects the detainees. Because I don't want to hear the same damn. I don't want to sit here in my car and listen to the same music over and over
exactly.
for an hour.
Yeah.
So
It does because it's all about sleep too. So you're trying to keep the person
sleep
awake. And that's
deprivation,
what I
sure.
was in Guantanamo. It's not only about annoying in their sense of hearing and stuff like that. It was also about keeping them awake, because if you put them in that room and they're sitting in that chair and they're waiting for a while, they're going to try to go to sleep. And your whole thing was keep them awake because the longer you can keep somebody awake, the more susceptible they're going to be to wanting to talk to you because they're wanting to open up. So, for an example, so you put somebody in there, you got that music going for a few hours, um, you're stressing them out, you're stressing their mind out, you're keeping them up, all this other stuff, right? You have the interrogator that would come in and he'll start sitting there like, I'm going to ask you some questions. Now, this isn't how it happened every time. This is just different. There's
Sure.
different ways to go after different people, and I didn't know that at the time, but they did a full evaluation on this person and said, this is how we're going to go after this person. Right. Anyways, so you keep him up and everything. He goes in there and starts questioning. I want to know about this. I want to know about that. And most of the questions they're asking, they already know the answers to. Right. So and all of a sudden here comes this attractive woman and a guy in a nice suit comes in the room and they just start cussing everybody. They're cussing me out as the guard. They're cussing out the interrogator.
This is a
This is not
plan.
how,
This is a
yeah, this
script.
is
A
this is
script.
all
Gotcha. Gotcha.
scripted plan. This
Gotcha.
is all scripted plan. This is not how we treat people. Da 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 da. And so now those two people become his rescuer.
Just a good cop, bad cop.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's what it is. You have to break down the mind because let's face it, I know, you as a ranger, Chris, you have many nights where you're out there tired. I think you told a story about
Yeah.
you were carrying your weapon on your back and you're just so tired. And at some point, you were just, I didn't even realize I was still walking,
Well, you
just
zombie.
keep
I mean,
going.
everybody does. Sleep deprivation is
Yep.
it's sleep deprivation is it's not it just sees how to us it's how far you can go. What can you do? How
Yeah.
far you can push yourself. It's not a torture. But
Yeah.
and when you say susceptible, it's not you're not more susceptible. You just your brain isn't as fast as it usually is. So when somebody's
Right.
asking you a question, it's harder to think up of a lie
Oh, yeah.
and be truthful and be as convincing on that lie because you're just so tired.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I get that, and I don't think I heard stories. I remember reading. I was in Iraq at that time, and I read a story. It was from I don't know which news organization calling that torture, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh shit! All these Rangers at Ranger Corps being tortured right now, guy." I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's like sleep deprivation, my ass.
Even
But that,
even your newly entry soldiers in basic training going without sleep. It's like
what
this
shit?
is
Yeah,
not torture. It
it's
sucks,
not
but it's not
torture.
torture. Yeah.
First night, man, at
Yeah.
30th AG of Benning. Well, when you were there, so I guess I want to get back to we skipped it with throwing shit in fecal matter
Right. Right.
throwing shit literally and cum and whatever spit in your face. Were
Yeah.
they trying to elicit a response? Because I was that was my next question. You answered it. Was it during Abu Ghraib, which you said it was?
Right. Yep.
Um, were they trying to elicit a response to get you to do something physical because they knew if you did that some media outlet, some whistleblower is going to find out, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're getting, everybody's getting beat, they're getting electrodes to their testicles, or
Yeah.
was that what they were trying to do? Was get you to get to physically put a mark on them to physically hurt
Oh
them?
yeah, yeah. That was actually part of it because the Red Cross was there constantly. So they
How's
would
it? Oh,
pull
jeez.
they'd pull random people and they'd schedule people to talk to and everything. But it was that, and it was just a game for them too because they were just sitting here like, I'm bored, so let me do this, but also trying to get you into the cell also. um, Not only for you to beat them, but hey, how can I do something to him? Because there was plenty of military or guards and everything that had their wrists or fingers broken because when they'd reach through the food tray to give them their food, the detainee would grab their wrist and then pull it down on the thing and break
Yeah.
it and break their wrist. So it was like a game, and they were. I think there was one time when we were doing intel collection in the cells where you search the cells, look for anything. We found a piece of paper and somebody was actually tracking scores on that block of who did what to what MP. We had our because this is when we were wearing BDUs, right? So we had our name tapes. We had a piece of tape over that because sometimes that would come off. And you got a real high score if you figured out the MP's name, right? For a long time before they figured my name out, they called me Sergeant Squeaky Boot because my right boot, because you remember we used to polish the boots black, and
Yeah.
if you didn't, anyways, that leather boot would squeak every time I take a step with my right leg, and so they called me Sergeant Squeaky Boot because all I did was squeak, 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 because I'd have to walk up the block and down the block, up the block and down the block, and they got annoyed with me over that, and I was thinking about trying to fix the boot for a while, and I was like, you know what, fuck y'all, I'm just gonna let it squeak, you know. I didn't
Well,
deal with them
I
too.
mean, that's torture. I mean, just annoying, annoyance right there.
Yeah.
You know, did anything that you saw, and you can might skip around a little bit, but did we get anything that you saw from Gitmo? And you did start to do your own interrogations. You went from being security to doing some helping out with some or am I incorrect on?
Well, helping out in an unofficial manner because when we get to, because you had different jobs throughout Guantanamo. One of them is you could be working the sally ports, or something, or work, like I said, working the block, walking up and down the block, or escort to their interrogation. And sometimes the interrogators, whatever agencies they work for. So when I say interrogators, I know different agencies call them different
Yeah.
things, but I'm just using interrogators, a generalization. But they would pull us and they'd sit there and they'd talk to you for a minute. They'd get a good feel of who you are and everything. And I mentioned one time to somebody, I mean, I just started soaking this stuff up. I loved it, right? So they would pull you in there and say, "Hey, we need you to do this." So you'd go in there, you'd take your uniform off and you put on a button-up shirt, some blue jeans and stuff like that, and you just sit there and kind of, either take notes or you would take part in it. And I'm learning as I go through this process, but one of the things was, you're the idiot. So like I would sit there and say, "Well, what about this?" He's like, "No, no, no, we're not worried about that," or "Don't say that." So the interrogator's using me as a prop, you know.
Right.
But so I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I loved it because I learned so much being in the room. But anyways, um, did we get anything from him? So the best example I can give you was there was one guy there. He was there for 4.5 years, and everybody told us to leave him alone. All the detainees that were on his right and left would say, "Don't mess with him. He's retarded. He's slow." Right. And if anybody gets upset of using the word retarded, I'm sorry. That's
Hey,
what the detainees were
I don't
saying.
think our audience
Right.
cares.
yeah, where yeah.
Yeah. So they would tell us, "Hey, he's slow MP, leave him alone, and donkey MP, leave him alone." And the dude acted slow. I'm talking about he had like the cross-eyed look and he was just like, "Oh, MP, give me this." And he would slobber on himself, he'd piss himself, all this other stuff, right? So he legitimately for 4.5 years played that role really good. And then I was one of the ones that escorted him to interrogation one day. And while we were sitting there, it was me and two other MPs. He pissed himself as we were walking in the door, all this other stuff. So we set him down, we, chain him up, handcuff him and everything. The interrogator walks right past us, and this doesn't usually happen. They usually let us come out and they'll let him sit in there for a few hours. But that interrogator just pushes us aside and he lays this stuff down in front of him. And it's just these pictures and these paperwork and stuff like that. And he says, "This is who you are. Here's this person. Here's this person in your life. And we're about to go visit them because if you don't tell us if you don't identify who you are, or this person is, I can't protect them from the rockets that's going to fall on them." And all of a sudden he just sat up and he just started speaking perfect English. And he's like, how can, what do you want to know?
Wow.
And, but for 4.5 years, he sat there and acted that way.
Wow.
So,
Man,
That's
there was,
crazy. That's a great
that
story.
that
yeah,
not that well, that's just and that just shows how, man, they do have some intestinal fortitude, like I said,
oh, yeah,
terrorists, and
yeah.
and but how dedicated they are to their to whatever they're dedicated. I don't even know what they're
Well,
dedicated to. Just how far they'll take it to win the fight, to win.
yeah.
It really is.
Well, there was so many people sitting there saying, that goat farmers were getting rolled up into becoming sent to Guantanamo Bay when they weren't really terrorists and everything. I was like, look, man, y'all don't understand the
Yeah.
logistics that goes into getting somebody into Guantanamo Bay. And I quickly learned that most all the people there were high up on somebody's food chain in some terrorist group or agency or a money person or something like that.
So it wasn't just some low level.
Yeah, there was no
Those.
low level. Everybody in there was at some, I would say, you know, they were decision makers or shot callers, wherever they were picked up at, or they had a special a trade or something, bomb maker. We had one guy that was, we called him the kickboxer. Can't tell you his real name because one, I don't know it, but we called him the kickboxer. That dude was solid chisel muscle if I've ever seen any, and that dude was deadly. He would hang because in where we were at in Camp Delta, they had like the rec yard, and it was just fenced in chain. It had this whole chain link fence across the top, so nobody can climb out or anything. Well, he would climb up the side and he would hook his toes into that chain link fence, and he would just sit there and do sit ups hanging completely off of it. I mean, that dude. Whenever they told, here's a quick story for you. So they called us one day. We were actually getting ready to leave the camp, and they were like, "No, we need y'all to come back because we have to do what's called a cell extraction or an earth, right?" And we're like, "Okay." So we go down, we get suited up, which is all that protective gear you wear that doesn't really protect you. And I was the shield man. And they said, they go through our brief. We have to have that camera in front of us, and they're saying, "Tell us your role, tell us this," and da da. They said, "All right, you're going into cell 63, and that is detainee number." And they give us his number, and we all had the number memorized. I'm not going to give it out here, but we all had the number memorized for the kickboxer. And I was just like, "Oh God, that's the scariest I've ever been in my life." Because anytime you go into his cell, somebody's getting hurt. And I was the shield man. So I was like,
Is
whatever,
that
here we go.
that's the first guy? That's
Yeah,
you're
the
the
first
first
guy.
one in. Okay,
Right,
yeah.
first one in. So my whole job is to put that shield up and, try to pin him into the corner down to the ground, just get him off the thing. But when I say this dude was tough, I mean, there was nothing in that cell that he couldn't use to his advantage. But anyways, so they get ready to open the door, and you can hear the shield shaking because it's like hitting the edge of the wall and everything. I'm just like, oh, this is gonna suck, but oh well, let's get it over with, right? And the cell door opens up, and as I round the frame of the door, I see this green Kevlar come over my head, and it's my number two guy, and he just wham hits the kickboxer, and the kickboxer turns sideways. So I finally get the shield against him, and I mean, it was I forget what movie it was where everybody's just on top of each other, grabbing arms, biting legs, and stuff like that. And people were trying to put zip. I had a zip tie on my arm, like right here. Whenever I came up
Because
out of the pile,
they
somebody,
didn't somebody didn't know they're just
yeah,
throwing zip tie.
oh yeah, yeah. And the kickboxer was an African American guy, and I was just like, guys, come on. I mean, this is the whitest the white can be, you know. But everybody was just grabbing whatever they could and putting zip ties on stuff. So
That's wild.
but yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit I was scared to go in that cell after that guy because he was
Do
meaty.
you know
I can imagine
what
that.
affiliate? Could you say what affiliate? Who what group he was with? Was he or was
Well,
he
he was picked up in Afghanistan, and his whole thing was he was a trainer at one of their camps.
one
And
of their
going back to your
camps?
point about these guys aren't stupid, right? Um, they they were actually ahead of the curve for a long time on getting to know our tactics and techniques. They spent more time watching us and studying us than we did them out there in Afghanistan and Iraq and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So we were spending more time adapting to them. So all these new systems came out, we thought, hey, we got this new jammer system for this IED and everything. Well, as soon as we did that, they had a new way of setting that IED off because the jamming system would jam it because they knew about it coming out, But anyways,
Yeah.
so they brought this guy in from somewhere. I don't know exactly what it was, but I do know he had a British accent. So you take from that whatever you want. But
That's weird. That is
yeah,
weird.
but he had no affiliation. He didn't care about Muslim, or he wasn't Muslim. He didn't pray with them or anything like that. He didn't care anything about their politics. He was pretty much, you pay me, I'm coming to train people. So, and that's all he did. And he was the one training the detainees on the block how to make weapons inside their cell out of anything we can give them. So in Gitmo, they only got like a couple of sheets of toilet paper, their orange top, orange bottom, their little toothbrush, a little tiny piece of soap, a mat to sleep on. That's it for the Camp Delta side. All that's out there in the media. That's not top secret stuff. But he would teach them how to make weapons out of all that stuff, right? He would teach them how to weaken the welds inside the cell by taking salt from your meal and water and build like little salt crystals on the weld. And he's like, guys, we're going to be here forever. So you might as well just, if you're in a cell, just go ahead and start weakening those welds and everything. And the camp commander actually found out they were doing that. So one of the processes of us doing a cell cleaning where we go in there trying to collect information is we would go brush the welds off and rinse them off and everything to get the salt off of them and everything. So they were they're smart, you know.
Yeah, man, fighting in war and
Yeah.
so many years and been in cells. You figure that even
Oh
I
yeah.
think even our own convicts and criminals in the high maximum security places know all the tricks of the trade.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what was the coolest? If you, I'd say coolest. What was the most intricate weapon? Yeah, I did because that interests me. I would watch documentaries, and I do. I watch about the big prisons and even go to some of the museums, and you see some of the weapon systems that are made out of some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Even just hardening paper
Yeah.
and making it. But yeah, did anybody that that you worked? Did anybody get seriously hurt while you were there? Or any
Oh
of your
yeah.
buddies and but yeah, I know it's morbid, but it interests me, man. I always find corrections and places like Gitmo and Abu
Yeah.
Ghraib and then
Yeah.
our own big prisons here interesting
Yeah.
just because it's its own little world. Its own little world within a world.
Oh yeah. And yeah, you're right. There was the most intricate weapon in Guantanamo was they would make this little spear gun, and they'd make I'd call it a little bolt because it reminds me of the little arrow from a crossbow because it's about that long. And my first time finding one, I thought this thing was made of wood or something, but like you said, it was made from toilet paper, elastic from the clothing, thread from the clothing, and I think some of the plastic wrapping stuff from crackers and stuff like that from the meals and
Wow.
everything. Which after a while we started having to like take plastic. We couldn't give them any plastic other than spoon. We had to get the whole spoon back. But
Thanks for checking out Battle Line Podcast. This is just a smaller clip from our latest episode, which you can check out in its entirety by clicking here. While you're watching, be sure to hit the subscribe button and thumbs up the video to show your support. Now, if you'd really like to help us out, click the thanks button below to make a donation. It goes directly to us in keeping Battle Line Podcast going